got Glen Biegel with you for the drive home, right here on AM700 KBYR, the news and talk of Alaska.
Morning news and comment continues. KBYR News Time, 7:06 a.m. On the phone with me, I've got Merle Temple, who has written a book, A Ghostly Shade of Pale. And I'm out on the website here, Merle, and looking at the reviews for it, and this is from the writer, advisor, and producer of Criminal Minds, Jim Clemente. Merle Temple is a great storyteller, writing to all of your senses. Ghostly is a crime story as literature, a story so detailed and complex, yet beautifully sinister. The reader is immersed in the feeling of absolute reality. Thank you so much for calling and being a part of the program. I'm looking forward to hearing more about this.
Well, thanks, Glenn. Glad to be here. Just thinking about Anchorage and back in the day when I flew in and boarded the Sea Princess and sailed down the Inside Passage.
Oh, what a trip that is. If people haven't seen it, you can't even imagine. Your mind can't comprehend the different shades of green that exist without doing something like that.
Yeah, when we pulled into Glacier Bay, the only thing I could think of, was God must live here.
Yeah. Well, that's absolutely right. I'm so glad you got a chance to come up to Alaska. It sounds like you have been a lot of places that the average person who had not had your experiences in life could not have written this book.
Well, I've lived about 3 or 4 lives in one, and some of it good, some of it bad, some of it very tragic, but it's all great fodder for an author.
Did you have the bug for writing? And I'm talking to Merle Temple here, wrote a book called A Ghostly Shade of Pale, and I am looking forward to reading it. It sounds like just the kind of book that I really like to read. But did the bug to write books come late or early in life for you?
Well, it really came late. I did a lot of writing in my professional career, first in government and then in the corporate world, but that was altogether different from writing a novel, and it was a learning experience and very hard at times, and at times you want to give up because you write and rewrite it so many times. You alternately think it's good, and then you alternately think it's terrible. And but I've learned a lot. Hopefully, I'm still improving my craft and working on the sequel to Ghostly now.
Well, the reviews here, and these are from people who are well known, certainly give an indication that you've crafted something very worthwhile, very believable.
Well, I think it's not your average whodunit. It's a behind-the-scene look at a very interesting time in America when a lot of divergent ideas and challenges kind of converged upon America, and everything seemed to come unraveled during the Vietnam War, civil unrest, the first so-called declared war on drugs by President Nixon, and rebellion against Mother and Daddy and their values at a very complex time, but a rich time to draw from. And in my own experiences in the Bureau, being held hostage as an undercover agent, meeting 2 contract killers in a standoff who were hired to kill me, and of course being ambushed during a heroin deal when they had a sniper on a railroad trestle who opened fire on us in a horrific gun battle. All of those things, somebody said, where do you get your inspiration? Some say, well, I meditate. Some say, well, I have a vivid imagination. And I say, I just remember.
Well, you listed several things, and I only got a few of them down here. You are a hostage. In what country?
That was in Mississippi, here in the good old USA.
Mississippi can be considered its own country, by the way.
If you're from up here. And proudly so, like Alaska.
That's right. Now, this is somebody who was a drug smuggler or something along that line?
Yeah, heroin dealers who decided at the last minute in a dimly lit shack at midnight, the moss hanging down, all the scenes like out of a classic B horror movie. They decided they would just keep their drugs, take my money, and kill me.
Wow.
And for 6 hours, they ate razor blades in front of me, blood gushing out of their mouths, ate fire to cauterize the wounds and to further impress me as if I needed to be further impressed. And a lot of prayers went up that night, and only by the grace of God did I survive some of that.
You were a member of the FBI?
No, the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics. They had just formed it, modeled after the DEA when they created that, and a lot of states created laws and modeled agencies after the DEA. And I was fresh out of Ole Miss, had no idea what I was getting into, and like some of my other fellow new centurions, as they call us, totally unprepared to deal with the subculture that we were about to infiltrate and deal with.
What is your take? So you witnessed there something that I imagine most people can't even fathom, that these drugs basically, to me, they make a slave out of a person. That a person's no longer, they're no longer in charge of themselves, and that something else, some external force, kind of runs their life. I mean, what is your take on? Do you say somebody ate razor blades?
Yes, they had a shotgun in my stomach and a pistol to my forehead. The main guy there who had just gotten out of Angola prison in New Orleans, which is a tough place to even survive. He had the old double-edged razor blades that some of your audience probably is too young to remember, but he put them in his mouth, bit them in two, chewed them, and actually swallowed them, and then blood just gushed up and bubbled up at the corners of his mouth and ran down on his throat, kind of like an old vampire movie. And he put his finger back in his mouth, pulled out a handful of blood, and asked me if I wanted some. I said, I don't believe I'd care for any.
How did you get out of that?
As the morning wore on, I had talked to them. Of course, they didn't know who I was, and I pitched a case to them that it was not in their business interest to kill me, that it would be more profitable to them to partner with me, and about the time the sun came up, they decided maybe I was right.
You must be a good storyteller in order to be able to convince people of that.
Well, I tell you, it's when you're in those situations, and I was in many of them. You had to think fast on your feet, and you had to be creative, and you had to be convincing, and it was just sometimes a matter of life and death. And in the book, I've tried hopefully to keep faith with the people I knew in those days. Most of them were really good people, and some made it through those days, some didn't. Some were killed in the line of duty in their 20s, and there were some also who just lost their moral center because they went in and infiltrated a subculture that they just weren't prepared to deal with.
It was a little stronger than they were.
Yeah, there were just too many goodies on the buffet table of temporal delights.
You know, I always wonder how the average person can get themselves into these circumstances and situations, and you see people just start as a normal person and fall into a drug culture and lose.
Yeah, there are a million stories as to why people begin and how it progresses. I've seen so many, and so many were really tragic, and some are people who I really cared about, too.
I'm talking with Merle Temple, who has written a book called A Ghostly Shade of Pale, and it's coming out the 20th of May, it looks like, in hardback?
Yes, a hardback edition.
All right. I really appreciate you for fighting what sounds like something that really, truly needs to be fought, and that is continuing war on these on drugs such as heroin. So I thank you for that. Thanks for your service.
Thanks, Glenn. They can pre-order on Amazon right now.
All right. His name is Merle W. Temple, and he's written a book, A Ghostly Shade of Pale. Thanks, and God bless.
Thank you, Glenn.